Hi, this is Tara Schuller. This is my software integration with Python, SQL, and Tableau data analytics portfolio project. This is a quick video run through of this central part of the project. We're going to talk about using the machine learning module to analyze new data and communicating with the SQL database. So coming over here to my Jupyter notebook, this first section, these first few lines of code just represent all of the machine learning training and testing. And here it's been imported as a Python module so that we can run it on some new data. And here we'll run the cell. And you can see it runs just fine. We get a few errors, but this is not an emergency. We can continue with the analysis and the workflow. And we'll just, we've saved the results of the predicted outputs in a data frame called df new obs, which stands for data frame new observation. We can just go ahead and take a quick peek at that data. So it produced a data frame. And we'll talk about the analysis in more depth in a different video, but basically what you're going to be interested in is these last two columns here, probability and prediction. That's the outputs of the machine learning model. So we've run our machine learning model on our new data. The next thing we want to do is begin communicating with our SQL database. To get started, you need to go over here to MySQL Workbench and create a new empty table. And we're just gonna run that real quick. So here you see we've got an empty table that's ready to hold our data from our Jupyter workbook. Hopping back to Jupyter workbooks here, just a comment with the code that creates the empty table. I've already connected to the database because I don't want you to see my username and password. But you import your MySQL library, create a connection with your username and password. Then the next thing you need to do is create a cursor. Now that you have a connection and a cursor, you can begin communicating with your SQL database. We're running just an easy, simple select statement, and we get a 0 because our table is currently empty. So the next thing we want to do is fill our table with the data that was outputted by our machine learning model. So to do that, we need to begin creating an SQL statement, an insert statement. We want to input all of this data. As you can see, it's pretty big. Well, not very big. It's just 40 rows. But you wouldn't want to write an insert statement by hand for all 40 of these rows. So we're going to use Python to generate our insert statement. And just a quick exploration of that data frame. It's 40 rows, 13 columns, kind of checking out how to get to the values here. This piece of code is a nested for loop that first we need to start the insert query. So that's the very first part of our insert query. Then we come down here. This nested for loop is going to build the insert query with all the data from our table, from our data frame. The outer loop just goes through row by row. The inner loop reads each individual cell going across the row, column by column. So once we run that, we see that our insert query has grown, and it includes all of the data from our data frame. The last thing to do, we just need to add a semicolon at the end, and there's our complete Python generated insert statement, and we can go ahead and send that over to the SQL database with our cursor. Now we run this, and if we go over to MySQL Workbench and try to visualize it, we see our database is still empty. When you're making a permanent change to the database, you need to commit that change. Now we can run the select statement, and we see we're going to get 40 rows. If we go back to MySQL Workbench, you see now you can see the data is in your SQL database here. It's been written from the Jupyter Notebook into your MySQL database. And then just down here, we've got a few methods for reversing the process and retrieving your data. You can use the fetch all method to get a tuple. A couple other methods. You can use, your read SQL. That gives you one type of data frame. The other method combines pd.dataframe and pd.readSQL, and that gives you back the data frame that in the format that you're used to seeing. So this shows writing and reading data to your SQL database.